Greetings everyone and welcome to another Orb Composer tutorial brought to you by Chords. This video is going to be a series of videos on composition in general, and also using Orb Composer as our composition tool. These are what you might call masterclasses on using Orb Composer and general composition techniques. Our first video is going to be very simple and focus on more of these simpler aspects of composing. What does it mean to have good music, and how can you produce music that anybody would enjoy listening to? So when it comes to writing music, there are about three main components that people tend to lock into when they listen to a piece of music. One is a rhythmic pattern, two is a melodic pattern, and three is a harmonic pattern. These patterns can be interchanged, intertwined, varied, one by themselves, etc. There's no need to focus on any one specific pattern because we can mix them together and match them as we want. But the key to success for most musical tracks, especially pop tracks and soundtracks for movies, if you want to really grab someone's attention, is to establish a pattern and work from that pattern consistently throughout your piece, whether that be a motivic pattern, a rhythmic pattern, or a harmonic pattern. The second aspect that keeps a piece of music interesting is not just vertical development. And what I mean by vertical development is adding more instruments. That's good, adding more instruments can be interesting, but it doesn't necessarily add anything new or interesting on its own. You want to also work on horizontal development. Horizontal development is when you change things like the harmonic pattern, or change the rhythmic pattern, or change the motivic patterns to enhance what you've already created. So taking a pattern and switching it up a little bit. But let's go back just for a moment to the initial talk about patterns. What is a pattern? How can you identify a pattern? Now, some people say that a pattern is a succession of three things in a row, but really a pattern can just be established by two things in a row. For example, what's next? So we have a pattern there that is established just in the first two successions of a single pattern that we've established. There are all kinds of different rhythmic, motivic, and harmonic patterns we can come up with. For instance, how about this? That's very simple, right? Nothing really complicated about it. What's next? Maybe that? Keep it interesting, move it along. So how can we effectively do this in Orb Composer? So in this series of videos, we're going to be starting by building a track from scratch and trying to work on these simple compositional ideas. Composition, if you really understand what music is not very difficult. Mastering it is difficult. Being great at it is difficult. But the very simple ideas and nature of composition itself is quite simple. And that's really one of the beauties of it. So why don't we start by just working on Orb Composer to see what we can do to establish these ideas that we've talked about. Now, to begin with, I've already loaded up my instruments that I wanted. I have addictive keys here for my pianos, and I'm going to be proceeding with the current setup here. I'm actually going to change the tempo on the BPM to 90 for now, and we'll try that. The key we'll leave at F Lydian, perhaps, just for fun, and 4/4 time sounds good as well. So first, we're just going to start with a simple theme block. And as you can see, Orb Composer has already created something. Now, I already can tell I don't like what it's created. It's a little bit wonky, but let's take a listen to it anyway and see what Orb Composer has come up with and if we can use it or not. So just on first listening to that, there's really nothing for me to lock onto. There's no pattern there that I can really grasp. I mean, there is a pattern in there, but it's sort of lost by everything else. So why don't we take a step back and try to lock it down to a pattern. What we're going to do is just work with this motif block. So I've just simply clicked and clicked the delete key to remove the other blocks, clips. And now what we're going to do is recreate the chords as well. I want to regenerate chords. And actually, let's recreate everything because I want it to be simple. There we go. Now we have a simple, nice chords set up there. And we're going to regenerate these chords a couple times. Just hit the random button a few times. So now let's try this again and see what we have this time. That's a little weird. I'm not a big fan of that. Let's try some different chords and also re-up the notes, change the notes here. So I'm simply clicking the chords button and the notes button to create new notes. There's definitely a pattern there that we can lock into. It's da 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 dun dun da 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 dun, right? So that is our pattern. But let's see what else we can come up with. What other patterns can Orb Composer create? So let's do another chord change, and we'll also change the notes again. That one's a little bit wonky on the rhythm. I'm not a big fan. Let's try again. So that's actually quite nice, but I'm going to choose my own chord progression now that I've locked into a pattern that I quite like here, and I'm going to make my own chord progression. So let's begin by starting our own chord progression. So we're going to go over here to the left side and click on chord wheel icon, and we're going to turn off the native and just see the user icons, and we'll just use this one that's already been created. However, we need to make sure we start it in the correct key. So we're going to kind of restart this. I like this idea that I came up with, but I want to use my own chord progression. So I'm going to be importing this chord progression, uplifting one that I've already created, which you can find a link to in the description below. There's a list of these chord progressions. But this particular one is just called uplifting one. And then we're going to add a motivic pattern. If you right click on the piano, you can go to roll and then click motif. So that's a very simple pattern. There's nothing complex there. Let's turn it up a little bit to get that complexity just a little higher. I quite like that. We're going to go ahead and use that pattern for now, and let's go ahead and increase the polyphony on the pattern, and also change the chord notes to 4, so it's a little bit more complex. Not too complex, but it will be a little more complex. So just listening to that, you can hear there's some good ideas in there, but it does kind of beg to be a little bit simpler to start off with. So let's keep it simple and go back to polyphony 1. Let's regenerate the notes. I like the pattern, but maybe not quite what we're looking for. That's a little bit too simple, just eighth notes. like that. So let's work with that. Now we're going to add another block. This time we're going to add a theme copy block. So it'll just be a copy of the previous block. But what we're going to do is now create a transition pattern. So we're going to add chords in the piano 3. As you can see, it already set it to chords, so we don't have to change anything there. And we're going to change this also to chords. And then we're going to listen to that as it comes into the next part. A little bit too complex there. Let's bring that density back to about 20%. Bring the polyphony down to 3. That actually works pretty well. But now what's missing? Well, we've gone through 16 bars of music and we haven't yet actually heard a melody. So let's add a melody. We will click here, we'll set the roll to melody, and we'll just see what Orb Composer comes up with as a melody. So I like that melody. It's rather simple, nothing too complex, and it fits well with what's going on behind it. It has a nice motivic pattern, and we can follow it and lock into it. What I would like to do, though, is just change the dynamics to be a little bit louder than everything else. So I'm going to raise the dynamic range of this melody to be just above the line of everything else. And I think that's actually pretty good. It has a nice melody, has a nice motivic pattern, and the chords are pretty small and not too intrusive. But now it's time to bring in some more things. So what we're going to be doing now is called vertical development. We're going to be adding a bass line. So this is all vertical development so far. We haven't really done any horizontal development. Nothing has changed yet horizontally, but we will. We want to make sure that the idea that we have stuck to sticks for about a minute, maybe a minute and 10 seconds at most. So let's put another theme copy block. We will copy this theme exactly as it was over here. And we will do the same thing here as well. We'll just copy this and copy that there. And we're going to add a bass. We're going to change the bass density to 50. And we're just going to listen to what that sounds like with everything else. So let's start from the beginning and take a listen to what we have so far. So that's pretty cool. I really think we have something here that's resembling a piece. And this will be the end of Composition 1 studies. I don't want to go too deep into this just yet, but in the next video, we're going to dive a little bit deeper and see how we can push this track to its limits with some horizontal development, and also changing some ideas around, and what it means to keep that interest in the piece of music that you're creating. So let's review what we talked about today. What we talked about was establishing a pattern, and making sure that that pattern is either motivic, rhythmic, or harmonic. In this case, we've used all three. And we can hear that the rhythm and the harmonic elements are very easy to lock into. It's not too jarring on the ears, and it keeps your interest. These are the kind of things that you want to look for when you're creating simple musical ideas. And then wanting to build on those ideas is definitely a good thing, but you want to be careful not to go too far or you lose your audience. But we'll talk more about that in Composition 2. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. So to start with, I'm gonna... Kitty, be quiet, please. Why right now? Oh, great, now I'm sinking.
Hopefully you found this tutorial helpful. If you did, give us a like. And if you want to get your copy of Orb Composer, click the Buy Now button on the screen. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them down below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos.